So now they are decentralized component. So decentralized exchanges. Of course, they have the benefits of not having the three main category risks, but there are many different downsides in those systems as well. Other than ignoring the the capabilities of the technologies, like it doesn't scale, it's not very user-friendly, and such other downsides of blockchain technology, which are still applicable to these types of structures. So how would technically a decentralized exchange work? That could be done in different ways, but the most common way you see in the current decentralized exchange projects are the atomic swaps version. So we explained this once before, but in a very quick recap, I send you Bitcoin in a smart contract which holds it, and somebody else sends 100 Litecoins in that same contract, and then I prove that I'm the owner of the Bitcoin, and then equally the other knows, okay, now I can get the Bitcoin, and then I see their proof, and then I can get their Litecoin. If you don't know what I just explained, atomic swap, definitely dive into that one once more, because it's a very interesting component, and you see it often used, for example, in decentralized exchanges, because they enable exchange in a peer-to-peer fashion. So not anymore the concept where we just explained the share of Heineken moving via a custodian and an exchange towards the entity, and of course many more other settlement systems and such. It's directly peer-to-peer. So if you want to have a Heineken share, I have one, it's digital, so give me the digital money and I will give you the digital stock, peer-to-peer basis. Met in decentralized fashion via atomic swaps, and of course done in a layout version, like for example in projects like Kyber or Kyber Network or Omise Go has an exchange. There are many different types of decentralized exchanges. What you need to be careful though is it doesn't matter how you technically arrange it, you need to have liquidity. So you need to have the liquidity of the good. So you can have your decentralized exchange, but if you don't have users joining your exchange, it really doesn't matter whether it's decentralized or centralized. That's what you currently see. People often tend more towards the centralized exchanges like Binance, because there are a lot of buyers and sellers there. Other than their decentralized components that work perfectly fine, where you can buy the tokens as well. So you see more and more centralization in that regard, where often people think that Binance, for example, is a decentralized exchange, which is not the case, and actually quite the opposite. Binance is custodian and exchange in one similar place. So where we move the Heineken stock via the custodian, Binance is also the custodian of your digital currency. So they are exchange as well as custodian, which nowadays they also are a fiat on-ramp. So they also exchange with fiat currencies and they are connected via the MasterCard. So it's getting more and more centralized and more power, of course, concentrated in one spot, which in my opinion is not very good for an ecosystem, but it does provide a lot of liquidity and enables more users to go mainstream towards cryptocurrencies. So it's a very good gateway to join. But the same could be said, for example, for Coinbase and many other companies alike that are basically being the next centralized entry gateways for new users. That's the best way to, well, in my opinion, the best way to rephrase their business model. So other than liquidity, of course, it's very important that if you are talking about decentralized exchanges, what are you trading? Can it even be decentralized? Is it a digital currency which is completely digital on its own, or is it like a synthetic, how do you say it, security, or digital currency that represents something in the offline world, like for example, a vote or a stock or a house or whatever. So the digital currencies don't need the settlement. It's the currency in its own that has the base value. But in the case of a synthetic good, like where you represent something else, you also need to have the settlement system. So if I buy your house on an exchange, I also want to have that exchange of that house in real life. So other than that, you can still have your decentralized peer-to-peer exchange. But if you have physical goods to settle, you still need to have a settlement system. And that's a very tough nut to crack for, of course, decentralized exchange systems. So important to realize is, what do you trade? And of course, main component is liquidity. Other problems are like, I couldn't ignore if talking about decentralized exchanges. One of the early ones was Ether Delta, which is I think it's Ethereum, of course, Ethereum based. You can buy many different cryptocurrencies there. Other than for Binance, for example, you need to pay Binance a fee to be listed, and then they would list you so people could trade. At Ether Delta, you just need to be technically capable to hook on that data, which meant in short that you needed to use a certain standardized framework for your contract, for your currency. I mean, which, for example, in ERC20 contract was perfectly fine. ERC20 contracts could be exchanged. Tokens created in those contracts could be exchanged via Ether Delta. But what happened here is that if you make an error in Binance, for example, if the price of a Bitcoin is $10,000 and I want to buy one, I enter and I accidentally change these two numbers. So, for example, I want to sell one Bitcoin for $10,000 and I accidentally filled in I want to sell 10,000 Bitcoins for $1. Binance says, okay, sorry, you need to be careful. This is a very strange transaction here. So are you sure you want to sell that much below market price? Ether Delta though is, as soon as you push the button, it's gone, your order is out. So if you change things up, and if you actually had 10,000 Bitcoins in your account, somebody will scoop them up for $1 a piece. And there's no way you can get them back because it's decentralized and the other one picks them up and it's gone. So the same applies with, for example, the payment network, which we haven't discussed before, but one of the downsides in the payment network when you use Bitcoin as a payment is the user friendliness. So you need to own your own keys and such. But also the volatility and such. There are many difficult things to cover. The same applies with the exchanging of goods. So you have way more responsibility in this case because nobody's here to protect you or to manipulate you, which happened in Binance case, as we will show you later on. But so it has some good points and it has some bad points. You as a user are there on your own. So if you fill in the wrong buy or sell order, you will lose a lot of money. I once witnessed myself, for example, the 30 ether being burned before my eyes. Not my own ether, luckily. But somebody mixed them up and I saw it in their order book and instantly it got out of the order book, of course, because they exchanged, the Bitcoin example happened exactly there. Well, not the 10,000 for one, but in this case it was one ether for, I think, instead of $300 for one ether, they did 300 ether for $1 or something like that. A huge amount of ether got burned in one wallet and gained in somebody else because it's peer-to-peer. Nothing stuck in the middle. Other than that, decentralized exchanges, many more to read upon in the literature. What you need to realize is that you need to have liquidity. And of course, what do you trade? If you trade a physical asset that's represented by a digital currency, you also need to have a settlement system. Other than that, same concept applies with the payment network. Same problems applies here as well. And keep in mind that current exchanges like Binance and Coinbase are often even more centralized than the current centralized exchange systems like Nasdaq before mentioned, because they also have the custodian of your assets. So they also are owner of your digital currency in this case. No, nothing more to add. For now, that's pretty much it. I think we can go on to the next session. Yeah, see you there.